Morning, Jim. Waiting on.
Good morning. How's everybody doing?
Good, how are you? Yeah, as soon as Dana and Tyler jump on, we can get started.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning. Okay, well, we've got everybody here, so we can go ahead and get started. And Steve is here also for our Parks and Rec discussion. Answer any questions that you have when we get there. First up in our packet this morning, we've got December financials. I'm sure you noticed that they say preliminary on there. Our accountant, Michelle, thought that that would be best to note that as she and Derek worked on Saturday to get an accounting error taken care of. There were some invoices entered in January that needed to be recoded to December. And so she wanted to put preliminary on here so that you all would know that those invoices technically still need to be accounted. But it really shouldn't cause too many changes in what you've got in your packet. Do you have any questions about our December financials?
I do not.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then we also have our February sales tax chart from Willie. Not unexpected. We are a bit lower than last year, about 24.83% change from the previous year and $15,000 down. All of our sales tax that we report is 2 months in the rear.
Okay.
And so it's not actually representing February, but 2 months in the past.
Okay.
And so Do we have any, sorry, I'm a little bit sick from ski touring. Um, any questions or comments on sales tax?
No, I think, again, recognizing this is December's numbers,
Right.
definitely see what is happening. And I will note, that sometimes, we see differences depending on month to month of like when certain things are paid. So,
That is also true, yeah.
we'll just have to keep seeing how this plays out. I know we all know the winter was rough. So
Yeah,
big
it's
shout
not
out to Jim
surprising.
and Melina for making ski touring happen, because I've just heard from multiple business owners how helpful that was. So thank you
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah, I definitely think that was a good push for everybody. All right, next up, you're on deck, Steve. We've got some updates on Kendall Mountain operations and Parks and Rec projects. And I kind of teed up this memo for you for all of the information that you sent along. If you would like to discuss some of the things going on in Parks and Rec.
Yeah, and maybe if I could jump in here real quick to one reason this agenda item was kind of my impetus is one thing I just wanted to have the board discuss, or at least start with the finance committee, is, when we look at our actuals, obviously Kendall Mountain revenue for the winter for lift ticket sales is like not it's like zero, right? Or let's have a discussion of that. And typically we've been budgeting, 40 to 50,000. So I just want to kind of acknowledge that reality and then frame this discussion in terms of like the good work that the FPR team has been doing, but how we want to manage Kendall for the rest of the winter, considering and recognizing that our revenue there has been lower than in years past because of the inability to open.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I think you hit that well with the doesn't take much investigation to figure that it'll be lower. It'll be interesting when the dust settles. I think things that are worth discussing. I went ahead and just went for the $100 season pass the rest of the season for folks. Maybe they'll get enticed to just go ahead and spend the 100 instead of the 31 for a one ticket, and then feel like it's then justified and warranted to acknowledge the folks that spent the full rate and trying to make it right with them. To me, it seems like just breaking it down to percentage wise. So you'd get a credit for next year for your pass. If you got the early bird 176, I think it ends up being you get, $76 credited if you did the 216, and so forth. And then sort of went with that same percentage for family passes. I believe somebody bought a family pass over the weekend, and I haven't gotten to check in with those guys on sort of how the sales went. Other revenue sources, let's see. So skate rentals. Don't have a good pinpoint on how much that generated, certainly more than years past. We used to just lend them out. My pulse on it was over sort of the New Year's period. We definitely had some days where, relatively insignificant, $180, but it helped, have somebody staff that as well. And then I tried to be strategic in keeping them productive, tuning skis and such. Let's see, other Kendall operations and capital investment. I think there's some huge successes really that did come out of this season and going into the season with, I've heard the term summer grooming. I think that a huge success was the pilot anvil that was kind of like, well, that's not mine. That's not mine. And it was like, wait a second, we'll take that pile. And so the sledding opportunities improved, made a larger start zone for that. Then that provided a little start zone for the rails, the tubes that we had fabricated that came from I call it the treasure pile. Some call it the waste pile. Down there, a little bit of utilizing skills with Public Works and working with John to have availability for folks to fabricate these tubes. I guess is the proper term. It's a draw. Kids were excited about them yesterday, so got to see that kind of coming to fruition. Like there's a lot of potential. This kind of jumps into NRD, but also still on Kendall. I know there's plans for that pile that's down by the depot. It's very large. Feel like there's enough to go around and enough for some to end up on Kendall as well to further improve say features. You talk to kids and they're like, oh, more of this stuff, and so you create that in the bare sort of skeleton of what the snow is gonna fall on. I think just removal of rocks. These guys have stayed productive and busy. Removing rocks from trails, as they poked out, it became evident, hey, these are some of the prime pickings. When you have a whole field of rocks in front of you, it's kind of like which one to grab. So some good productivity there. A lot of thinning, I think 15 plus heaping loads of brush were removed because we could still get the truck up there. So then we hauled that out. Kept some of these folks that committed to the season, relatively busy. We lost one, unfortunately, and understandably. And I think a beauty of staffing up at Kendall is you get a diversity of skill sets. To get somebody that had a background in wildfire and running chainsaws. None of the Parks and Rec crew are overly comfortable in operating chainsaws. Try to create a little bit of development opportunity for those folks that are full-time or say part-time, full-time, in a sense. We have one he's a part-time employee, but he's very present year-round. So yeah, those are some of the good successes that came out of this, and it drove the conversation for snowmaking. And what kind of options are out there. A lot to be learned still. And you have the operation that's quite eye-popping, go through 179,000 gallons of water in a night, and in 14-hour shifts, you've got yourself this massive pile of snow that can be used for ski joring. There's actually excess, and sort of my analysis we ran the little trailer that's about, say, investment would be 15,000. The big operation, Rich Weber, we're looking more like $500,000, at least. And so it's really pushed the understanding of sort of options. We did get to see the trailer run and see the pile of snow created at 20 degrees for 10 hours of operation. And I found it to be impressive. Certainly underwhelming when you look at what Rich Weber produced. And harvesting from Rich Weber's pile that was the leftovers, you could make a pile bigger in 10 hours with a loader. So it's kind of now we have the snowcat though to deal with. Okay, so any questions on sort of the Kendall operations?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just had a quick question. When you're talking about maybe adding features and using stuff from the depot, are we talking about that RCA, that the recycled concrete aggregate that we're looking at building, or are we talking about dirt?
Dirt and
Okay.
that massive
Perfect.
pile. Yep.
Okay.
And then there's
Okay.
also still a lot of earth down at Anvil that needs to
Okay.
be relocated. So,
Perfect.
that could even dive into exploring maybe people interact with these surfaces with bicycles.
Yeah,
So. you know,
awesome. Okay.
trying to
Well,
stack
thanks.
functions.
Yeah, great.
And I assume, Steve, as you work on this, I know this was the case with the rails, that we're just continuing to work with SURSA on, obviously insurance coverage. I mean, I know they know that we're operating a ski mountain there. And with the rails, it again, I know, Steve, you and I talked about it, is it took a lot more rigmarole with SURSA to be able to use recycled materials than if we went out and paid, $20,000 a rail for some new rails. So I just appreciate your effort to try to push through that and making sure that we're continuing to work with SURSA on insurance coverage for things we're adding.
I've got a quick question, just more so as I'm building up my knowledge. In these, low snowpack years, or where, we get snow and then it warms up right away, have there ever been scenarios or conversations about like a tipping point where, it's costing more to, open when we can versus, calling it for a season? Or, is that something we've had to deal with yet?
I think it's the first time,
Okay.
this year is the first time that
Well-
we've got to this point where we've been able to open, but it's the end of February.
Okay.
At least as long as I've been here. I don't know. I mean,
We've had one other year. It was, I think just my brother was, I think, the head of the Parks and Rec back then, and it was just too shallow and too dangerous. And I think, I don't remember, Steve, did they finally open just towards the end? And they did do a push to open, but it was incredibly delayed. But yeah, this is also something I think that we might, this might be something we need to forecast for moving forward, because our snow years are becoming worse and worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is really the question I wanted to have. And thanks for asking that, Elizabeth. And forever tunes in on Zoom or YouTube. Welcome, Elizabeth Stuffings, our new town admin. I apologize you didn't get really an introduction on Finance Committee, but tonight at the meeting you will. This was kind of the question I wanted to have as the Finance Committee, and then maybe the board, is like, what is that tipping point? Because I know, I dropped my kids off twice this week at Kendall. Like, I know what a huge asset it is for the local community when when we can open. But the question I kind of had for Steve and whatnot was like, okay, is there a point at which it doesn't make sense to have our seasonal employees and we kind of need to call it? Or exactly to Elizabeth's point, is at what point is it like time to call it?
And
Yeah.
if we pursue snowmaking, I mean, obviously that hopefully would allow us to operate. Like, that's the biggest thing for me after seeing the snowmaking this year, is like, if we can do that and stay open, like, I feel like that's something we should really, really go after. But
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, Steve.
No, that's a good point. I think that makes me think of from what you just said, Tyler. It shifted my head over to, I approached Rich Weber and said, is it worth approaching you, next season and having you come up for 3-4 nights if we have a good forecast? And he said, yes, absolutely. And then you're looking at sort of, okay, there's that cost, versus the massive investment. Yet, for that cost, maybe 2-3 years of Rich Weber, you've got that snowmaking trailer, and in 10 nights, you've made your way up to Green where it's in the shade. There was still boot top snow 14 days ago up in the shade on Green. There was one little problem spot that I've seen over the years that's usually a problem spot. Is that little trailer gonna blast the whole mountain and get us open? No, that's not the case. And Grady was very upfront with that. Like, this is supplemental.
Yeah.
This can help, but you still need, cooperation, from weather with snow and also with temperatures. 20 degrees is kind of marginal. Then you get into your dew points and whatnot, and even trying to make ice this year. I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, we can celebrate this cold weather finally, and you just couldn't get single digits until beginning of December. onto the like cost benefit of at what point do you throw in the towel? A lot of these guys that were part-time, I kind of just wanted to keep it open. Like, you committed to us, I want to commit to you. They're pretty content not working, which was nice. One individual kind of said, "Oh, I don't need the work." They ended up being the one that left. I felt like, oh my gosh, what a loss, because they actually had a very strong set of carpentry skills and was able to have them fix the handrail at Kendall around the porch. And so I think there's a beauty of having, this diversity, and for just small little one-offs and like kind of having a pool of folks to draw from to accomplish these little things, where if you brought in a contractor or something, you're gonna spend that much more. Is it that much
Yeah.
more to keep the door open to opening? I don't really see where there's costs.
As long as they're not clocking miscellaneous hours, which none of them were, based on payroll. Nobody was doing, nobody was clocking any hours that weren't real.
There wasn't much just busy work. It actually became a little stressful trying to keep folks that were full-time fully busy. Like it takes capacity to get the most for the town's investment in that time. And so that I found is a challenge. And a beauty is all those guys are comfortable putting down new layers of ice. From observation in the past, that's fallen on one person's shoulders, and a local who has a fair bit of experience quickly convinced me that you don't have one person lugging that hose around the ice. I also learned on my own, having an extra hand. So you've got the monthly reports that would have to continue to be done if you didn't just say throw in the towel. And those take, I would say, in a day, they're about done with those. And we continued to just keep folks up to speed. I brought in those part-time staff to be a part of running the evac motor and engaging the lift. And so those were some costs. But otherwise, the lift sits there and it doesn't cost town any more money.
We just invested quite a bit into the lift to keep it running.
And then you've also invested into your NDT inspections, your haul rope inspections, your inspections from the tram board, and then your licensing fees. And so then your weight, or your investment into that just becomes that much greater with less return once you throw the towel in. Then you're kind of leading to the fact that, okay, we've spent $7,000 to $10,000 just to make the season an option. And then, you throw it in, then there's the debate on how, if you wonder, like, are you an unreliable product, and why should somebody buy a season pass?
Yeah. Well, and I think there's a lot of cultural benefit, like just having it open a couple weekends versus saying we're calling it. There's, people get angsty in the winter when the economy's terrible and we don't have any snow. And like, if you can at least give people something, it's worth a lot. I just wanted to make sure we were having the honest conversation about Kendall revenue and Kendall operations. And I think we were really successful with ice making this year. And so we learned a lot. And what I see you doing, Steve, is investing for the future, right? Like, you've invested in training for how can we make good ice at Kendall. We've invested in, like you said, some of the overall just maintenance and, the grooming, the features, et cetera. And so that's investing for the future. And so as long as and then it's the balance for you managing your team of we have to staff up for Kendall, but then if there's, we're not operating, then you're either shifting to, hey, we've got some deferred maintenance we should really invest in with some of these staff that we have part-time seasonally, or hey, folks, we can't give you the hours we thought we were going to give you, but we're still glad, you were around. So, I mean, I trust you to manage that. And we also have the case that Kendall has not really been, Kendall in terms of lift ticket sales has not been profitable for previous years. So it's only been in the last 4 years that I've been on the board that Kendall has actually been somewhat profitable in terms of lift tickets. And so I think as a community, we've always just valued operating it, as a community benefit, maybe not with the revenue that we hope for to sustain it. So, but I just wanted to at least have the conversation, give the public an update that our plan is to keep trying to run it, or our plan is to call it, and just be intentional about what we're planning for over there.
Yeah, I think just continuing to where we have the opportunity to run it, keep it running.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think that, it's not obviously this winter going to be a huge economic driver, but I think just a resource for the locals in a tough winter, that means a whole lot. So opening it for the locals, I think, is just as important, or more important.
There are a lot of really happy kids there this weekend.
That's people are bummed on the winter, and the biggest losers this winter have been the kids.
Yeah.
So,
I can tell you there's seasonal depression over here because we didn't get ski Fridays or anything. So one question I have is, if we're planning to kind of, again, keep operating, hopefully we'll get some more storms, etc. Can we just pay attention to the weather and really promote it? For spring break, can we open all week? I know Durango has a different spring break than Silverton, so maybe we want to clue into Durango's spring break and really promote it to the school kids there, or I don't know, just is there a way that we want to market it a little bit more? And maybe Taylor has some ideas there for kind of the remainder of the season, or Steve, get the broom ball stuff out, or just find a way to market a little bit more for what we do have when people all around the Southwest region are having a bad winter.
And if we do have enough snow over there, it would be great to maybe reschedule the kids' boxcar derby.
yes.
I think that they would appreciate still being able to do that, even if it's a closing celebration, or if we want to try and do it around, I don't know. I know that they're already, there's a special event permit pulled for a St. Patrick's Day parade, that Yvonne is putting on. And so I don't know if we wanted to tap into that, but, I'm sure that they would really love to still do that. We have a bunch of cardboard downstairs, so.
Gotcha.
Yeah, a whole heap of cardboard over at Kendall waiting for our postponed cardboard derby.
Yeah. And
yeah,
just oh, go ahead, Steve. Sorry.
I was just saying, I like that, hitting Durango and maybe having some extra days. I think we are going to go till 5 once daylight savings happens, which is different.
Yeah. Yep.
but-
Yeah, we didn't really get to run night skiing, but maybe we can salvage. I mean, I know, bringing up a family from Durango for the weekend or for the day, right? That's some sales tax revenue. That's just people in our community. So if we're able to promote a little bit to our north and south, maybe that will help. And then just to clarify on the ticket sales. So what I hear you saying is that if people did the early bird, we're now talking about just doing $100 season pass, so we would be looking at issuing a credit. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
How does that sound to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. I think that makes a lot of sense. And like you said, doing some sort of competitive pricing so that people are we might encourage people, we could forecast how many realistic weekends we think we have left in the season, and, forecast, offer some promotions. I don't know. I mean, Jim's really good at hotel promotions. I don't know if he has any suggestions on how we can promote.
I appreciate you bringing up my name. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yeah.
I'm glad we're having this conversation. When I read it in the packet, I was happy about this because I do have several questions. First being ROI. What's our return on investment? Long term, short term. Is this a good fit for town considering where we're at financially? And my stance is it's time to double down. We have to reinvest in our town. We have to reinvest in our infrastructure. And we need to do a better job. And I'm loving the fact that T's on board now because we can promote what we have and really go at promoting what we have. I did have a question for Steve regarding the trailer, Grady's trailer. I think I walked through it with him the very first day. We started doing putting together that the snowmaking equipment, and Grady came over and was talking about his equipment, which I think regardless, I think it's a great idea. It's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it, regardless of the production. I think the one snow gun and the equipment can produce what the two snow guns produced over a greater length of time, but I think that's just planning. That's number one. Number two, Grady did say that there were he didn't have that the equipment didn't have long enough hoses. Do we have the hose capability to run this equipment from the river to a location that's desirable?
We do. We've not done that operation yet with the idea, just the investment in setting that whole system up has been, I guess, somewhat hard to justify. We can run from the hydrant. The chlorinated water makes not as high a quality of snow, but it runs 25 gallons a minute roughly. And so turning the plant up seems to have been the best move for now. You get benefits of not only the non-chlorinated water, your water temp is going to be a little bit lower for starters. And have hose to get a good bit further up the hill. And I think to your point too of planning, I think in general a slow time is that kind of between the end of summer and fall tourism season, and then winter operations. And there's endless projects, but keeping folks busy and running from say 4 a.m. till 10 a.m. when the sun hits. We certainly get 20 degrees. While it's not optimal, it still made a pretty sizable pile of snow. I think we started getting, at least from what I saw at my house, probably mid-October. We were 19 most nights. So we do have temps. I believe if we really doubled down, you could have skiing year round over there. But it'd be a summer attraction. Come snow sliding on your sled, get the folks in the summer over there. But I mean, just seeing what other, these are much bigger budget mountains, but Copper Mountain operates a ski camp based on stockpiling snow all winter, and they run for the summer. So,
well, you just look down the South Valley at Chapman Hill. That's the only snow in Durango is right on that hillside, right?
Exactly. I mean, I can see it. I can see it from the window over here.
Yeah.
No, Dana, I agree. That's probably the best analogy. My stance has always been reinvesting in our own infrastructure and appreciating what we have and taking care of what we have. And I appreciate you, Steve, giving us this update. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, let's market it as much as we can for the end of the season and pray for more snow.
Yeah.
And then I guess my question to you, Steve, is I'm still trying to understand. So we would need to purchase, right now we're kind of borrowing the trailer and testing it out. So if we wanted to continue with it, we would need to purchase it. It would be $15,000. Is that right? For the current trailer. And that's really supplemental snowmaking.
Yeah, that's correct. And that, minus I went ahead and said, let's pay for all the parts, just trying to keep the momentum going. Cause,
Yeah.
about $3,400 in parts. Grady did he called it gratis for a lot of his time. There is
Yeah.
some time that I feel very much obligated to make sure we settle up with him on, because but yeah, and that's right now we're calling it trial, and have a contact down at Durango at Purgatory, who's head of the slope. I forget their title exactly, but essentially he's our access to maybe even additional hoses, or say things that are getting cycled out. Grady definitely made a point of expect things to go wrong. It's not if they'll go wrong, they will go wrong. The very next morning, we were all excited and blew a gasket, and we're waiting on those parts still. So it was kind of okay, well, let's learn what we need to have stockpiled so that when it does go wrong, hey, we've got it right there. And then you have somebody like Doug, who I've thought like he could have built something like this if you went and just bought the lamps or the wand that combines your air and your water. So
Yeah.
I think we can make some good stuff happen.
Yeah.
What about and I apologize for jumping back in. Would this be a purchase for the full dollar amount, or is he willing to own or finance, or we're just gonna lease option for this equipment?
I kind of told him like I was saving that, I forget the title of that line item, but we had it there. Just about as far as within the Kendall operations budget.
Okay.
There's 2 lines that we could have pulled from that would have accumulated to that dollar amount.
All right.
It was really, we began this discussion and I said, let's get the pump parts on the way back in August or September. It's been a little while. So, but it's hard to come up with parts at times, but we've got them now, and the pump works, and yeah, got to see what it does in that 10-hour period, 20 degrees. So
Let me ask you a quick question. Dropping it in the river, dropping the pump in the river, and then utilizing the turbo. Would it be advantageous to us to go out on the market and see if there's any used equipment that we can purchase? Because I believe you stated 25 gallons a minute.
Yeah.
For the current equipment.
For that snowmaking system for that trailer. That trailer does 25 gallons a minute.
Okay.
These fan guns, like what Mr. Weber had, they're about 200. They can do 250 gallons a minute.
Yes, that's why I'm asking.
So, and I think another piece that queued up a bell to me was when Clark was proposing the mitigation grant and it going for infrastructure. Just having a proper point of diversion at the Kendall Bridge for that water right would be a wise move. And then that could ease the whole process of getting your water from the bridge over to the ski hill, to then turn it into snow and put it on the hill. And great thing now is this time of year, there isn't the competition for water, and we have props to the person that pursued that water right and secured it, and that we have it. And the trout law for being really on top of, we just filed our diligence report, and Peggy was really on point. We had letters of opposition and she knew exactly where to go from back when to say, no, you've agreed. So
Great.
that's a treasure that we have right there.
Well, thank you,
Yeah.
Steve. I know I have more questions, but I can ask them later on. I don't want anyone falling asleep.
I'm not following. I'm excited. This is great.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Well, I
sir.
think,
Thank you. Thank you.
so it sounds like we have some money in the budget for the parts and continuing to operate the trailer. And then maybe the discussion needs to be for next year, continued investment in potential snowmaking. Again, to Jim's point and Tyler's point, we've invested a lot in the lift. You know, there's these continual improvements we're working on at Kendall. So that should go into the discussions for, I think, budgeting for next year too.
I think so. And yeah, considering, do we connect with Rich Weber and see what we can do to maybe he runs 2 fan guns and we connect to the bridge
Yeah.
and have that type of 14-hour shift, or something like it.
Yeah. Because sometimes we don't always have to make the investment that we need to be able to have $500,000 worth of snowmaking equipment. But when we have options where we can have partnerships with people to
Right.
leverage equipment and opportunities and rentals, that could be a smart investment too.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to jump off for a meeting at 10, so I did want to be cognizant of time. Tyler, Jim, any more stuff here in terms of continued Kendall operations for the
No.
season?
And I'm right with you. I've got an ambulance thing at 10 as well. So thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like Steve, just suggestions to continue to market hard for the rest of the year. Let's go. I think it makes a lot of sense. I didn't hear Tyler or Jim say anything different in terms of offering reimbursements or credits for people for next year. I think that makes a lot of sense we haven't been able to operate for the full season. So yeah. And then I see, so Taylor Rock's memo is next in here. And so again, I think we've done a lot to make that rental income sustainable. And I see her recommendation is that we're implementing a 3-day minimum. I think that's what we're planning to do, right? We're doing a 3-day minimum.
Yeah, that's something that we used to do anyway. When Nathan Baxter was in charge of events, he required people to book 3 days minimum for weddings. Just because it makes sense. People typically need a day to set up, a day to have their event, and a day to break down.
Yeah.
And then I did want to note too, her projected revenue of $72,000 is a good bit more than what we budgeted for in the 2026 budget. We estimated that we would bring in maybe 60,000.
Okay.
So where we're standing right now is already above what we thought. And then if we go into 2027 and we do require this 3-day minimum with increased prices, then we can bump that up even more to her projected numbers there.
Yeah.
Which I think would be great, and especially as we continue to do improvements to Kendall.
Yeah. Well, and we haven't seen a decrease in bookings with the increase in the rates. And so Elizabeth, just for your reference, we increased rates quite a bit for non-locals and non-locals. And we didn't really see a drop in bookings. So I think that was a good move.
Okay, is that increase, is it for 2027 or is that with previous?
We increased last year. But starting last year, the price for non-locals went up quite a bit over the local price. And we've continued to kind of adjust those numbers.
Okay, thank you.
And it hasn't affected people's desire to book Kendall at all, which is great. So people are certainly willing to pay for it.
Okay.
We did kind of a market analysis, and also the rationale being that the deck was finished and the just overall asset that Kendall had improved. So yeah. Okay, and I agree. We have Taylor's memo there. I think prioritizing wedding bookings and really making sure our marketing is on point is great. I think she's really brought that capability with some targeted marketing. So I would say, yeah, keep going. And if there's options to, off season, try to promote Kendall for those corporate retreats, offsite events, businesses. It's our one asset in the community that can host a larger group. So trying to push off-season rentals to some of those other types of renters, I think is great.
And this doesn't include the potential for people to rent an EC either, which I think that, I know that she's definitely working with that too. And so that could also be a nice potential revenue stream coming down the pipe.
Great.
I have a quick question on that. And it'd be really quick. Knowing the direct correlation between the finance committee, town revenue, and sales and marketing, is it possible at our next finance committee meeting to get a true breakdown and update on our 2026 marketing and advertising campaign from Rock?
I say, yeah.
I think that'd be great.
Yeah, so Jim, with specifics, you're looking for like how much we're spending, where are we advertising, that kind of thing? Yeah.
Yeah.
Down on marketing.
And if you guys think it's better to have Rock present in front of town board, that's fine with me. I just think it'd be great for all of us to know where it is we're focusing our efforts.
Yeah.
No problem. I'll make a note of that. Okay.
I could go either way. Do we want finance committee or whole board?
I don't care. It's up to you guys.
March 16th. So will be our next finance committee meeting. Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
I think that's great.
Thanks, guys.
And then last up, real quick, I know that two of you need to jump off here soon. This is something that Steve and I have both worked on and discussed quite a bit. Is this Parks and Rec manager position for really a major support system in his department. This was also something that as far as funding this, Gloria asked me to keep an eye on before she left, because she also felt that this was a really essential part of Parks and Rec. And what ended up happening here was the the law enforcement contract ended up not being paid out in full because they didn't need the funds. And Willie told her to keep an eye out on that. Sorry, I'm having a hard time thinking. From that, there was $38,189 that was left over from the sheriff's budget. And then we should be receiving, I need to follow up with Willie, but we should be receiving a little bit more back from them because it was not used. And then we also still have quite a bit of money in the part-time budget for employees in Parks and Rec that we can pull from as well, since not a lot was utilized over the winter. And I really think that this is what Chris Higgins' position was meant to turn into, was somebody to really support the director, help prevent burnout. And I think with the addition of the public works admin position, that has shown that is pretty essential in helping with grant management, outdoor activity, and all those things. And Steve, I'll let you jump in if you'd like to add anything else.
I think the one thing that gives me pause is the potential reduction to what it was, 23,000 came out of part-time employees.
I
And
think that might actually be a little bit lower now, Steve. But
Okay.
once we get back, I think that might be a little bit lower now. We did draft this a while ago.
And it would be worth exploring even coming out of operating supplies in that I spoke to it earlier. You get a pool of folks to pull from with a diversity of skills, and what you can accomplish is greatly increased. And then within the operating the lift, I feel pretty strongly that 4 is a number that should be over there. When they have operated with just 3 staff, that has somebody on all the time. There's no room for any error, and any sort of incident that happens, the lift essentially needs to get stopped, or they need to lock up the Kendall building and divert, all 3 of the top, the lift bumper, and then say the ticket salesperson, there's just no room. And so have tried to be very intentional with that fourth staffer. Now that fourth staffer, 7 hours a day, 3 days a week, say 21 hours a weekend for 16 weekends, that's not including your, that run over New Year's where you have 17 straight days, you know, there's 67, roughly 100. We have one person who's part-time and is really taken to the lift and the mechanics of it. You know, and running just numbers of, say, averaging 30 hours a week and call it 50 weeks, 25 an hour, you're looking at 37,000. So I do have a bit of a pause towards losing that much part-time. Having gotten to wear the shoes of the Public Works admin coordinator, I feel like that position paid for itself 2 times over, pretty quickly. And how previous Public Works director was able to achieve what they did is pretty amazing. And it's tough. I think when you get the right people in the right places, in the right positions, that return on investment will be there.
And Steve, that additional money, you're right, could be pulled from operations or could also explore the idea of using some of that additional revenue that we're going to be pulling from facility rentals too.
Yeah.
So that's an option also.
Okay.
You don't want to reduce any of the part-time budget, that's fine. I think that there's plenty of other space that we could figure that out, so.
Yeah. And I've gone back and forth, so I'm like, oh, do I need to? I had a great meeting with John Zarkis. He kind of said, from my observations, you need it pretty badly. And yeah, I've really come around to just capacity, and then looking at the NRD project and potentially having that fall in Parks and Rec as far as grant management. And then the deferred maintenance. By the way, we now have buckets in Kendall. So, you know, we don't have buckets in Town Hall, I don't think. I heard some condensation over the recently.
Not at the moment.
But in general, there are 4 buckets there. I could file about that. So, but you know, so it's coming to a head, some of the other stuff, and it just is wouldn't be sustainable for somebody who is gonna try and have any other, like say, investment in family or life, is what I've kind of come to accept. So
thanks for that, Steve. I have a couple thoughts here. I'm very supportive of this position in terms of I've seen what progress we've been able to make on projects and grant management with the Public Works admin position, right? Like having someone at the desk regularly that's different than the director has definitely helped us move along some infrastructure projects and grants that we've really, needed to address, whether it's refuse, whether it's the meter problem, what you untangled, Steve, to then Val, to now Stuart. I think it has just added such capacity to that department. So I really see the same thing being possible with facilities and parks. And I'm right there with you that I think in terms of the NRD project, right? Like if we get it fully funded, that's a $5 million project in the center of town in the Animas River, right? And certainly we'll be partnering with MSI and Ramble, and there's brownfield stuff. Like that's not all for town to manage, but that funding, the town of Silverton is the main applicant for that kind of stuff. And so even if we're partnering, there's a good bit of administrative oversight that is going to require, and we need to make sure we're staffed for it. And then I also, to your point, Steve, see what Chris Higgins did. Chris was running Kendall, and it allowed some more kind of free up of time for the director as well. So having this dynamic where there's this partnership, I definitely see the benefit. I think it's just always considering the ROI, where we're investing our money, what we're getting with it. But I think it's important to continue some of these big projects like the Animas River Corridor project and some of the grant management stuff, and make sure that, you know, we don't keep burning out our facilities and parks directors, because there's a lot to be lost when we have to manage transition there. So I'm very open to it, but I also hear what Steve is saying in terms of reducing the part-time. And, you know, I'm just going to keep putting in here, we haven't had an evaluation of our housing director in a while, or any sort of salary compensation or adjustment there in terms of what she's done. And so I just want to make sure I'm super supportive of this position, and I want to make sure we center the financial conversation in two things: thinking about it in the broader picture of all of our priorities, and secondly, making sure we can sustain it. Because even if we have the money from the sheriff's department surplus this year, it doesn't mean that we'll have it next year. So I want to make sure we're adding positions that we can sustain.
Mhm.
I
And
agree, Denny.
I can reach out to Willie too and just get a feel of what he thinks about that budget, especially since Bruce is going to be leaving in April and there's going to be an interim there for a little while. And additionally, again, I think that I think moving into 2027, if we are able to bump up our facility rentals that much, I think that there would be enough in there to both help continue to fund that position and work on capital improvement projects for Parks and Rec.
Yeah. And if we're working on capital improvement, we're probably going to be seeking some grant funding, which is going to require some additional grant management. And I know we've been working with the individual, Steve, that you've been working with. I'm forgetting her name right now, but she's done great stuff there. But I just think it doesn't hurt to invest in this department with additional capacity at kind of that manager level, if we think we can sustain it. But
And I think another benefit there too, if we do find somebody with a diverse level of skill sets, which is I think something that you look for when you hire people for your department, that person could also, in addition to helping with grant management, but also help actually do maintenance work rather than having to call a contractor from Durango that's going to charge us a lot more to come up here and do work. So I think that's also another benefit of that position as well.
Jim, Tyler, thoughts?
I'm in agreement, Dana. I think we should keep this conversation going with regards to this part-time, full-time filling of this position. I just need to see the numbers. I just need to see how it would shake out, because I see layer after layer after layer, and this is something that I've preached for 6 years now. And I'm seeing government become bigger, 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 and justifying that cost. How do we do that? So I just need to see more numbers.
Jim, would you like for me to do a little bit of research, and would you all like to see this in our March board meeting, or do you want to see this in our March finance committee? Because I can probably do the research on those numbers for you before our first meeting in March, which will be on the 9th.
Yeah, I'm down. I think more information is always good when making decisions. And it's just, for me, it's, again, prioritization of time, money. If we have that individual, can we acquire the grants? And you know, when these grants, we can write into it so these folks can pay for themselves. So I'm all about this. I totally understand it, and I'm fully supportive. But my question is now the right time? So having that additional information would be great for me.
And or I just keep saying, is this something that, like, again, there's the one component where FPR potentially has some excess revenue, maybe, but at the same time, we don't have the Kendall revenue this year for winter. Our sales tax might be down. Like, I'm just always about being strategic and centering financial conversations within the larger picture of priorities. And so does this make sense to have this conversation as part of the trustee priority setting for the new board that will be seated in April. I think I'd look to Steve to kind of say, like, are you coming to us and saying this is an kind of not an emergency request, but like, hey, I really need you guys to prioritize this? Or is this something that we want to center in the trustee priorities of kind of how the trustees want to spend staff time and taxpayer dollars next year?
And I think also I'm sympathetic to, the idea that somebody needs help
Yes.
with the workload. I also do think you mentioned a minute ago, the housing authority. I think the larger conversation, you do need to look and like who else, has asked us for help, in the recent past that, could also be struggling. And, hopefully we can come up with an idea that, can maybe fill a bunch of these holes. But yeah, I think maybe looking at it as a, more holistically. Again, Anne, like you said, we haven't looked at Anne's position or the help she needs, or if she needs more money as well. So, and I know the Parks and Rec job is a big job, and so I don't know. I think looking at it all together, and I think you guys looking at it in your trustee priorities will be great.
Thanks, Tyler.
And I will be cheering for you guys.
All right, well, I know that you two both need to jump off if we wanna wrap up, and it's almost 10.
Yeah, let's wrap it up. I know everyone's got to get going.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we need to just answer the question of does the finance committee or the board, do we want more information on this in the March meeting? And I guess, Steve, I would ask to you is like, what are you really feeling in terms of this position, the support you need? Like make the pitch like, hey, yeah, we should situate this in the trustee priorities, or no, I really need this support in our department for all the things coming down the pipe.
I think you ask good questions, like hearing you mentioning housing authority and hearing Tyler mentioning filling 2 holes at once. I'm still figuring this out. Did I start at a sustainable pace? No. Will I be around a lot longer? Who knows? I love what I'm doing. It's addictive. And there's just so much potential. So it's hard to, and I think with extra support, it leads to seeing hopefully results more quickly, which increases the addictiveness of it. And gosh, so also, I guess I look to you all for weighing looking at that whole picture. And I like to be creative and think of ways that we can fill multiple holes at once. Or is there, I feel like I hear government's big, but I think even at an increasing government, we're increasingly stretched is what I observe. So.
Well, what about this idea? Why don't we put it on the March 9th agenda? Melina, if you get us just some more details on budget and numbers, to Jim's point, and the reality is we'll have 2 new members. Lindsay's continuous. And so I think we have a great board that can have this discussion, and we'll kind of leave it up to the sitting board to kind of say, hey, this is how we think we should prioritize this, because there is a lot of continuity and we can situate it within this larger discussion. So how about put it on March 9th and we can talk about it as a board?
Okay, sounds good.
With the current board or the new board?
With the current board. So
Okay.
that'd be the March 9th meeting with the current board.
I'm fine with that. I just and I really like what Tyler brought up about filling the 2 seats. And if this individual is multifaceted, because I think we need that. We
Yeah.
need people that can work outside the direct scope of the job description and be able to multitask.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Well, and what I'd ask from Steve is if you could really put on paper what you think your department needs going forward. You know the NRD stuff is coming down the pipe. You know there's a number of deferred maintenance things. You mentioned multiple times how much you value the varied interest, like having seasonal folks who have varied interests that you can kind of like get a project done or get something done in their downtime. And so I would really love to hear your insight over the last, time you've been in this role is what types of skills do you really value right now and for what you see in the future? Because then that will help the board say, okay, this is where we need to invest. Because it's possible that we need more investment in the FPR team. We just need to decide what that investment should look like to make it sustainable, productive, and accountable.
Yes. And knowing where we are within the region with grants and money for grants, and it's drying up pretty quick.
Yeah, and if
I just want to be strategic.
Yeah. Do we need more seasonal stuff that can get projects done? But then you want the woman we've worked with to do, she could do grant management. We don't have to have someone full time. I don't know. There's all kinds of options. So Steve, if you could kind of think through the staffing, what do you really need? And Melina could work through the numbers, then we could have a productive conversation on the 9th.
Okay, sounds
Thanks,
good.
guys.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
and I
right.
think also just making sure that even in the meantime, if there is anything that we can do to lighten the load, because again, turnover, we can't afford that. That's way more expensive than I think anything else. So if we can do anything to help lighten the load in the meantime while we're working this out, if it is completely unsustainable, like what can we do to make sure that we can, keep our current folks around?
Yeah, thanks for that, Tyler. All right, guys, I got to jump off. It's 10:02, and that's the Finance Committee meeting.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
You.
Thank you.
All right, good morning.